Hello, this is Melissa, and it's Real History on Thursday, the 28th of September, 2023. And I'm joined today again by Peter in BC. Left brain, right brain. Peter joins a cult for part two because Laura, who I was going to be speaking with, unfortunately is dealing with some serious illness in the family, and it is taking up a lot of time and energy, so that is too bad. I am appreciative that you were willing to join me so quickly and get into this a little more deeply.
Hello.
So how's it going today?
Pretty good. Melissa just contacted me yesterday. And then, so Melissa, I haven't gotten hardly any of that homework done that you texted me.
That's okay. I really didn't expect that you would.
Okay, I'll look. But I watched the first documentary, the one from like the 80s.
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I remember those documentaries. I bet you I've seen that in the 80s. I was a kid. I was fascinated by all the cults and stuff.
So what this is a documentary that was done in 1984 and also a book. I think they had similar titles, but it was Gods of the New Age. And this is something that Alan mentioned quite a few times in his talks over the years, particularly in some of his earlier blurbs. What it does is it exposes a lot of how the New Age movement, this is meditation, yoga, and a lot more, was brought into the West and for what purposes and so forth. So it's a good kind of foundational documentary on the subject.
And it brought me right back to being in my parents' basement watching all these shows, like the narrator and his tone of voice was just like, you remember the show In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy? Do you? Yeah, because that's what I thought, geez, it's the exact same accent, same tone of voice, the way he talks. But yeah, that brought me right back. But like saying that, this place is nothing close to any of those gurus. And like, I think they were talking about the cult where everybody has to wear orange or purple. And like the guru, and they moved to the States somewhere. Netflix did a whole series on that cult in 2017 called Wild Wild Country 2017.
Wild Wild Country.
They go into detail. It's like, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours documenting that cult and how crazy it was.
Interesting.
So this is way different. Like, I call it a cult, and it's got its own total weirdness and CIA involvement and WEF and the UN. But it's not like that at all. It's presented as a meditation, a place where you can learn Buddhist meditation. It's a meditation retreat. So you come for 10 days, and you take a course, a meditation course. And if you don't like it, you leave. Most people stay till the 10 days is up. You get a free place to stay, you have showers, food, breakfast, and lunch. It's all cooked for them. No dinner though. They're supposed to live like a monk for 10 days, and at the end of 10 days, get out of here. Like, there's no love bombing or anything. The serotonin takes care of all the love bombing. You don't need to keep people around, and there's no physical contact. You're not allowed to hug. It's kind of like they're silent and meditating for 10 days, and then kick them out of here. Some of them want to stay, and they can stay and do chores and get set up for the next course and things like that, but they have to stay working. But there's no like accommodations for people to stay. And the guru, I call him a guru. See, this is my mistake. I call the place a cult and a guru. And I don't want to sound like I'm sticking up for it. Like I said, it's got its own weirdness altogether. But it's completely different. Like those, I think, let's just say the intelligence agencies have already studied them, did their research, and they found them useless. Like Jim Jones cult, like that's interesting. Can we get people to drink the Kool-Aid? And all these gurus from, like the one that the Beatles went to, this is completely different. It's just 10 days and get out. You're home. Like, they don't want to hear from you. You can get a newsletter about upcoming things, but there's no, and like the children's course was the closest thing where parents came with their kids and stayed, and the kids tried to learn a little bit of meditation, but it was more like a, family picnic. where everybody just came and the kids were running around and playing. They weren't interested in any meditation. Yeah, it's not like those cults from the 80s, as interesting as they are. This is something completely different. I think that they studied all those different cults. They knew that, like these gurus, they're not much different than TV evangelists. That would be our version over here. You have TV evangelists that just are taking everybody's money, and like retired people living on a pension, sending their pension to these guys so that they can go to heaven. But here you don't have to pay up front, because we don't want the people that come here. I said we, man, I don't want to be we, but they don't want the students to complain. Like I paid for this. They were asking $750 for the 10 days. You come on the day before, so it's almost like 12 days. And like when you pay, like, well, I don't want this food. It's made by volunteers. They might screw it up. The spaghetti might be all sticky. But when you're paying up front, people complain, and I want, I have to send it back to the chef. So at the end of the thing, they give a donation. They're asking $750. Most of them give $250, $300. People don't give anything. The place continues on. So it's for about $300. They get to come here for 10 days, free food, free place to live. Like $300 is a hotel now in BC during the summer for one night.
I don't have it in front of me right now, but I'll try to look for it. But when we were talking about this the other day, it reminded me there was a group that's got about 400 branches across the U.S. called Sunrise Movement. It's Green New Deal, climate change, especially going after young children in schools. And they were trained, the two young women who started this organization were trained by a group of people that basically they create, and I'm doing the air quotes, the grassroots movements. They give them a brand, and they motivate all of the people who are going to be involved in this. And in a minute, that name will come to me. But the one little piece of trivia that I recall from that founder's bio, he is up there. You don't find that much. He's kind of the mystery man of grassroots Saul Alinsky type organizing. And he even cited Saul Alinsky as, a sort of spiritual mentor. Well, one of the things that he does every year is he does a 10-day Vipassana retreat. And I didn't remember that when we spoke before, but I do remember when I was looking into it. And when I read up on your place afterwards and saw that they weren't charging people anything, that it was donations when you were done, I realized, well, if you look at these Vipassana centers around the world, obviously the relative comfort of a lot of them, some of them are a little plainer, but many of them, they're quite nice. And these aren't done by people who are paying $200 or $300 for their 10-day visit for room and board. This comes from a higher level donation. And I think that somebody just like this man who's doing Saul Alinsky organization and then being a mouthpiece for this, that's where your big bucks come in.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not saying that you have seen that there, but it's probably obvious to you that the place that you're at couldn't maintain itself on those kind of modest donations.
Well, we did talk about that when I first called you, and I said it's such a coincidence that when they went through COVID, they were shut down, like all the churches and courses and schools. So they were heading into financial hardship, and then luckily they would get an inheritance of like 1.3 million, and all these different inheritance of people leaving their pensions. And I thought that's really fishy, because a kid from Alberta was saying, oh, same thing over in Alberta, we got an inheritance. So that's what I was saying. Like, I was thinking, whoa, like maybe it's funded from somewhere. But there's another theory I have, well, I'm pretty sure this is it, that explains that coincidence. because they think that the meditators started dying. And a lot of times they like to leave because they're buying their way into Buddhist heaven and I'll get a better life after. So they don't want to pay the money now, but why don't I leave it in the will? And in Canada, if you leave your money to your kids, the government gets half of that. At least that's the tax is 50%, I'm pretty sure. But not to a non-profit organization like this. Mm-hmm. So then when I'd asked them, they knew the guy. They'd met him. He used to come here and sit. That's what he did. He came for 10-day sits, and he was on a committee that would vote on things. So he put them in his will, and he went out for a bike ride one day and died of SADS, sudden adult death syndrome. Like,
really?
They just said, oh, he must. Yes, really. Well, that's what I've been told. And they just said, well, he had a heart problem, and we must have had a heart attack. But the guy was healthy enough that he always went for a bike ride in the morning and then just dropped dead. So I think that's where a lot of the money is coming from now. And there's still the donations and stuff, but the whole time, like for the past 30 years, they weren't getting started from donations in India. They would have drives where people could donate so much a month to a mortgage, and then they'd start centers. I think a lot of them get started up by that. There's a lot of documentaries about how this one started. Oh, I don't even have none of that written down. I've got I tried to prepare for this. I got sticky notes all over the place.
Why don't you just start taking a look at your sticky notes and tell me, what you were thinking?
Well, geez, this is a bundle of stuff here. I was just gonna. Well, okay, so that's where the Vipassana. It's a Vipassana foundation. So now that's what I learned from Alan. When it's a foundation, that's Masonic terminology, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, it's been set up. Now, the CIA and the KGB were well interested. Well, I know the KGB because of what Yuri Bezmenov said about he went to study the one in the Beatles, and that one was just a ridiculous guru. But a CIA contractor, I don't know what they call the guy. It's on his Wikipedia that he worked for the CIA after World War II, and he went around, and this technique comes from Burma. So he learned the technique in Burma, and you can see old black and whites on video where people from the 50s were flying into Burma, Americans, and then bringing it back. And then I guess there was a bus tour you could take from London in the early 60s that would drive you right from London into India. And they would take
what was this guy's name?
John Coleman.
John Coleman,
the CIA.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
So, and that's interesting because we were saying John Coleman, because there was the other guy that wrote that book about the Committee of the 300.
Mm-hmm. Different
And his
fellow.
name was John Coleman. Yeah, different guy, but I was thinking, I bet that's just a CIA pseudonym? Oh no, what do you call it? A fake name for writing a book? Yeah. I was just thinking that because Coleman is also a lantern company, I think established in the early 1900s. So gas lanterns, gas lighting, Coleman gas lighting.
Yeah.
That's their business.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this guy, he was teaching the meditation outside of Burma, because the guy that was teaching it they weren't allowed to leave Burma at that time or get a visa to other countries. One guy did, the Hindu guy that's been teaching this, it's Vipassana by S.N. Goenka. Mm-hmm. He got his visa to India, and that's when he started teaching in India. And then the center's just like the way that it popped up all over the world. From like the 1960s to now, it's just wild. Like it had to have a lot of help along the way by some agencies, and like John Coleman was involved in it. He was the teacher. You just look him up with John Coleman Vipassana. He'll come right up on Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, I can look right here. Yeah, John Coleman, John Earl Coleman, and it tells his story. CIA guy, started teaching Vipassana in Italy. Died a little while ago. Wrote a book about it. The Quiet Mind, it's called, by John Coleman. So, and like I said, they've always been interested in serotonin. So this old technique, and this is the one that Ashoka used because it would spread rapidly. Anybody with any religion could just start meditating if you believed in the hocus pocus or not. That's what I did. When I first went there in India, I was talking about the sadhus there, and it's like, fuck, a guy who read my mind. That's what it seemed. Could be a parlor trick, but, like I said last time. And then the neighbor said, oh, we're going to a meditation course. I said, okay, right on, I'll go. And I just phoned and got a spot. And after 2 days, I thought, these people are nuts. This is crazy. I'm getting out of here. But I'm going to try to concentrate, like they said, on this meditation, like the first basic one, before I leave. And right after, when I got up after an hour, I thought, whoa, I felt a buzz, a high. That was a serotonin high. That's the first time I felt it. And then so I stayed and did it again. And it would only last like 30 seconds to a minute. I'd get it longer. Like now I'm pulling it up whenever I feel like it. So that's how you get them in. It's a serotonin buzz. Like they're told that they're going to fix their souls and it's going to repair everything. And that's a little more detailed. I can get into that. Because after the fourth day, they have to sit without moving. So they're in pain. And they're told to be equanimous with that. Don't feel the pain. Don't worry about it. Don't react to it. So while you're feeling pain, like for an hour long, and it goes on for another 6 days, your body is going to start releasing all kinds of stuff to deal with the pain, from natural opioids to all kinds of chemicals. And so you're getting a serotonin buzz when you stand up. You've got these sort of opioids or whatever your body's going to deal with pain that you're not able to end. And then when the hour's up and then you release from it, you're rewarded with dopamine. So the high is like coming from all over the place with this technique. Mm-hmm. But it was the ancient technique and it worked for Ashoka way back then. So I think they were interested in getting it going and probably just monitoring and studying like how it worked. And at around the same time, that's when they started with the MDMA and Prozac, serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Mm-hmm. Like at the same time that this cult started to spread, this whatever it is, cult. Yeah, let's call it a cult. I just didn't want you to think that it was like those crazy guru cults where the people are dancing around. Or Sad Guru. He's been on the advertising on the Joe Rogan show. Sad Guru.
Oh, I haven't seen that. No. I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
one.
That guy's a real goof too. He's always laughing, like Santa Claus with his beard. Makes me sick. This guy.
I think the way this works is that when they have something, whether it's a technique or a product that they want to be widespread, they make sure that there is something for every strata of society. So this might appeal more to, I notice on the website that they're targeting executives and business people. So this would be aimed at people who wouldn't want to follow around somebody who's dressed in orange and, speaking mumbo jumbo to them. That would turn them off because, they'd go, well, this is a cult. So,
yeah.
It's a little
the
subtler.
You're going to get highly suggestible people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the cheese in the mousetrap, like the worm on the hook, is a serotonin buzz. And I'm still trying to figure out how the rest works. But before I forget, you're talking about executives. The biggest one I know of is Klaus Schwab's little mini-me buddy.
Harari? Harari. I read that. I had totally forgotten that, but I remember reading that or hearing him talk about it in an interview.
Can you say his name properly, please? I just started it.
Is it Noah? Is it first? Is it Noah and then
Noah Yuval?
I think it's Noah Yuval Harari.
Oh yeah, well that sounds close.
Yeah, and that's good enough for us, right?
Yeah, everybody knows that little Yuri.
There's another one. So now this is a person, he's what they call a public intellectual. So he gets all of the, academic awards and grants and notice. And, he's the spokesman for all things terrifying, the end of humanity, AI, et cetera, et cetera. But you're right. He is, I think.
Klaus Schwab's mini-me. Like Dr. Evil's mini-me.
Yeah.
And his name is Yuval Noah Harari.
Yes. Okay, Yuval Noah.
Lives in Israel.
Uh-huh.
He wrote a book called Sapiens, I think. Don't have any clue what it's about. It was advertised on cheesy late-night talk shows and seems to be some kind of a joke.
Well, that came out a while ago, I think. And, it's one of those, let's take man off of his pedestal. We're just animals.
Well, yeah, he comes up with all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, we're going to be able to go into your body now and monitor your chemical reactions. Yeah. So when the great leader gives a speech, you can sit there smiling and nodding, but we're going to know that you hate him.
That's right.
You get frustrated, and we'll send the police will pick you up in the morning.
That's right, because humans are hackable.
Stuff he says.
One of the other things, too, when you said that you wanted to talk a little bit about intelligence agencies and Bezmenov, I got into the Stargate project. And you can find out a lot of declassified CIA things about meditation. But Stargate was, what they said it was about was primarily for remote viewing. And this was back in the, when did it start? I'm not exactly sure. 70s, I guess. But they felt that the Russians were doing all of this mind control and mental tricks and psychic phenomena, remote viewing, and they didn't want to be left behind. And this all came out comically in the book and the film called The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you saw that, but when you actually take a look at the CIA, at CIA.gov, at the Freedom of Information Act reading room, what you've got is pages and pages of single-spaced. It's actually kind of hard to look at because it's just one line after another, and dates and document numbers, and then the information just all flows together. And I'll just read like a little tiny bit there. This is something that was approved for release in 2003. It said, CIA, and then they give a document number, who have no experience in meditative techniques and whose progress in that methodology is enhanced through effective visualization and external objective affirmation. Display of the subject's brainwave pattern on a cathode ray tube has proven to be a laboratory-validated means by which subjects may quickly learn to place themselves in profoundly relaxed states characterized by the sort of quietude and singularity of mental focus associated with advanced meditation. So some of this you can find online referred to as gateway. On the official, like if you call Wikipedia official, when you look at Stargate, they really downplay it, and you end up thinking that it is exactly what was portrayed in The Men Who Stare at Goats when they introduced the public to the idea of psychic driving by the repetitive playing of the theme song from Barney. And they got a little LSD in there and a little spoon bending, so the parlor tricks. But actually, the documents show that the CIA was involved in studying all kinds of meditative techniques and in a laboratory, monitoring brainwaves in a laboratory environment of all the different meditation techniques that are out there.
Yeah, from what I could read from there, when they studied it, they never talked about serotonin or chemical release. It was all brain waves, alpha, beta, and I'm not super familiar with all this. Something I'd like to look into, see why they would call it that. Yeah.
You mentioned to me, and I hadn't had time to listen to it yet, but you said there's an audio clip I'd like you to get into the talk.
Oh, okay. Brilliant.
And if you want to mention that, I'll be sure to include that. But do you want to say what that is?
Yeah, sure. Let's dive into that.
Okay.
Well, I've heard Alan mention this a bunch of times. I found it twice so far, just since when you said that we'll have another talk. His second appearance on the Alex Jones show. So this is about the right and left brain in occult. Like it's all over the occult, the right and left brain, and even the corpus callosum, the bridge in the middle. So like the Freemasons have Jachin and Boaz. You remember, and it's usually in their artwork and stuff, there's like a keystone that binds them both together. So I'm pretty sure that's the left and the right, and they have different terminology. They would call it, among themselves, they call it soul and spirit. This is what Carl Jung called it. He used the Latin for soul and spirit, anime and animus. In the writings, it seems like he's talking about female and male, but that's also how the old alchemists said it. I'll send you pictures from where you see a split brain where there's two different faces on the same body, and there's the sun and the moon above them. So just like the left and the right brain, like the left brain can only reflect the light of the sun, like that's represented by the moon. It's the right brain that does everything. The left brain is really just a follower. So all this symbolism is there, and they animus, and it means spirit and mind. If you go to your phone and type in Latin to English, it won't quite come up when you put anime and animus, but just like you can reverse it. Usually on my phone, you just hit it and it'll go back Latin to English. Hit it a few times and it'll turn into spirit. Because like in French, the word for mind is esprit. And that's the same word for spirit. I had to look this up. It's called a homonym. It's a word that has two different meanings. So the same in Latin. The word for mind was the same word for spirit. And sometimes when I kept playing with the phone, it would translate it spiritus. So the same, like French is a Latin language. So they were talking about, and Carl Jung, but he wasn't giving up all the secrets. When I listened to Alan, he was saying that Carl Jung had a lot more understanding of the occult than most people know, but he didn't want to step on any toes. But he was talking about the right and left brain, I think. I got to go back and look at that now again. But they call it soul and spirit. So Alan, he's talking to Alex Jones, and Alex Jones will say fleur-de-lis, and Alan says, yeah, it represents the body, soul, and spirit all working together. And he says,
and so this is a eugenics program. This is what they really mean about how the study of genetics would cure all the world's ills. Well, it will for them when they make us all a specific type that'll serve them much better without the problems. And that's where they've been going steadily ever since. And all the different branches of the Illuminati that sprung up were just branches of higher Freemasonry at the time. And Weishaupt's order was the Bienen order, the order of the bees. They had the beehive as a symbol, the perfect society.
The fleur-de-lis.
Yeah, and it goes all the way back to Egypt too. The fleur-de-lis initiated in Egypt. You'll see it in the top of their columns. And also, it's the Trinity. It's the perfect unification of body, soul, spirit. Whereas the ordinary person, supposedly, this is what they joked amongst themselves. The ordinary person didn't have spirit, they just had soul, which was nothing much. And so there's all this propaganda to reinforce what they believed in, and they always recruited from the universities.
And Alan says that they joke around because the little people, the peasants, they only have soul. And that's not much.
I want someone to tell me, answer if you can. I want someone to tell me, what is the soul of man? I've traveled different countries, traveled in furthest land. I haven't found one to tell me, what is the soul of a man?
Because the rich people have spirit. And then in another time, I think it was December 27th, 2006, Alan mentions that they would joke around about the little people and say that, and call them the poor old souls, and that they don't have spirit because if they don't have function of the right hemisphere, that's what it means to me.
But we don't want to go along with the elite either. See, the elite have talked for years about giving themselves eternal life. That's all part of their great work, as they call it, for themselves in their ancient religion, in books which were published in the 1700s for each other, because they were the ones that could read then outside the priesthoods. they talked about this religion quite a lot, and how their spirits were different from the common spirits. You know, the common souls. We're just souls. We're poor old souls, actually. I've got boots like that. And they talk about how they have spirit and how they were a superior type that were sort of imprisoned here, or cast here, and how they created their first human bodies to inhabit through forcing by pure willpower the earthly materials to create the bodies, which still retain special powers, but by inbreeding with the commoners, they began to lose them, hence the need for genealogies and back to inbreeding again. That's what they used to give us as a story. No doubt to impress us and make us go, wow, because if they'd say they're special, even in a negative sort of way, and we believe it, then we're putting ourselves in an inferior position. And I've used these techniques from ancient times. You'll find the Ptolemies, for instance, Ptolemy, who was a general under Alexander, ended up sort of inheriting as part of the booty, or the luti, they may call it, the loot, Egypt. And traditionally in Egypt, you had to be descended from the pharaohs to get the job. So he had a dream with the permission of the priests that he'd bought off, and he told this to the priests, of course, and he kept his lines, read his lines well. And so the previous pharaoh's spirit came to him in a dream and said, "It's okay, old boy, you're really one of us." And that was good enough to get the job as top pharaoh. So they sell these ideas to the public that they're special and different. And after a few generations, people do believe they're gods, you see. And it tells all kinds of fantastic things to make us believe it. And strangely enough, the more fantastic the story, as I've always found, the more people want to believe it. Kind of like reptilians and stuff.
I could be wrong, but that's the hunch I was coming to. Like, wow. So you can play where Alex Jones says fleur-de-lis and where Alan says, like, that little people only have soul, they don't have spirit. And in the religion, he says, go right back to Egypt at least, that body, soul, and spirit all together, working, functioning all together, that's like a holy person. Now I'm getting mixed up with Alan Watts. He calls that a holy person. Like, it actually means the whole person is working together, and from that word we got a holy person.
Touch on a little bit the allegory of the chariot, because this is something that Alan, Alan talked to me about this, and I don't actually know that Alan ever spoke about it publicly, although he might have. But when you mentioned that you wanted to talk about that, I think it's a good thing to discuss and give people a visual idea of the allegory of the chariot.
Yeah, and that's why, because I was sitting here thinking, what part did I forget about the soul and spirit? And it's the allegory of the chariot. So that's from Plato, Pheadrus, I think. Can look up all the details after. Yeah, so it's a charioteer, and it's the soul. The whole thing represents, or like, not the soul like I was just explaining, but an animating force, like the Greeks would say. So you have two horses, one white and noble and listens, and one that's wild and it's black and it's just wild. And they say one's beautiful, one's ugly. And you have to steer both of them. You have to control them both so that they work together. And then you could, like in the allegory, they can go up to heaven. The ones that can't steer them, they'll be drawn down, or the chariot will be ripped apart. But that's what I think it is. It's union of right and left together, and using your corpus callosum. Because the corpus callosum, they named it calloused body. And if you're not using your right hemisphere, you are dead inside. Like, you don't feel your emotions tangibly. It's really, you have a calloused body to your nerves. But I don't know if everybody could understand that.
No,
that gets back to this meditation where you learn to feel around inside, feel your heart beating, feel what an emotion feels like as it rushes from your chest down through your body. I had a junkie girlfriend once. I'd never used heroin. Like, once I tried to buy opium in India, and I didn't know how to smoke it. I was trying to smoke it like hash, and I ended up eating it and getting constipated. So I've never done it, but I just started dating her, and I went over to get some soup that we cooked together, and then I found all of her needles. It's pretty scary. But then she wanted me to try it when we were drinking, and I just said no, but I got her to keep explaining it to me in detail. And that's what she would say. It would start at the top of her shoulders and rush through her body when she would shoot up. I think she was taking pharmaceutical pills. Like, you can get them for free, and people, like, in BC, the government gives them to people for free if you just say that you're a junkie, and then they would mix these pills up, and they'll also give you little kits. So you get a little spoon, a little thing full of sterilized water, a cotton filter to suck it up after in the needle. So, but this is all provided for by the government. And right now they've changed the laws here so that, well, just wait, we better not get off topic. So this is how she described it. So she could feel this rush through. You can, when you get sensitive on the inside, using your right hemisphere, you can feel an emotion, nervousness, happy. You feel other people, and you feel it rush through your body like that, through your bloodstream, especially through your bloodstream. Like, every time you breathe in, you have to, every one of your cells has to breathe. It needs oxygen. So that's the first one you tap onto, that wave up and down. That's the good feeling of your cells getting a breath of fresh air, of oxygen. And you can feel that wave going up and down, called a flow. And it's pretty wild. Like, these are all the tricks that they get you. This is why I'm still here in this madhouse. Because it's still so interesting, and I haven't figured it out, the con, or how it works. And I want to know. Well,
which is it that you're trying to figure out, the con or how it works? Or how the con works?
How the meditation works, but since I've been here, I've been so sidetracked on how the con and the foundation and the organization works. Uh-huh. Because I'm inside of it now. I have a job here.
Obviously, there is more than one way to control the left and right hemisphere. There's more than one way to be the charioteer.
Yes, this could probably just be a dead end, but it still has woken up. Like, it's amazing to be able to feel on the inside, and to get a rush of serotonin when you just need one by just stopping and concentrating in the middle of watching a movie. Like, I'm bored. Like, a lot of junkies come here, and alcoholics, and it's their rehab. And after 10 days, they do pretty good for a few months, and then they have to take it from there.
Well, how do you feel that it has affected your desire to drink? You said you've slowed down.
It's like it wrecked a serotonin high. It's hard to explain by drinking. And you can really feel like, even weed, like, it's something to do alone. I can't even talk to people properly. Like, it impairs you. Well, that's what it's called. And it just impairs you. It makes you retarded, especially weed. Can't function anymore. So that really wasn't the purpose of coming here. Well, kind of. I wanted I was drinking way too much. But, it does. A lot of people come here for that purpose, for a rehab purpose. And they don't care about any of the other crap or whatever like the old Buddhist stories and reincarnation and good parmies and leaving your will to the cult. And, like, they just tell them in, like, parables of olden day times, and how a guy just wanted to donate his money and his life to the Dhamma.
You mentioned the woke direction that the center is moving into universally, and I wondered if you could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's another fascinating thing I didn't see coming, because they got to follow all the rules, can't break the rules, you can't fart in the fucking Dhamma hall, and you can't, like, all these things have to be done on time, and to keep everything in the pristine purity of 2,300 years ago. So all those rules were sacred, and all of a sudden we're going full on woke. Like, this guy called the guru, I think he's like a useful idiot that was doing the teaching in Burma, and then met he definitely met the CIA guy, John Coleman, and other Americans probably involved in the CIA, and they used him. He was a true believer, I think. He didn't seem to make any money on it right to the day he died. This guy Goenka gave a speech at the UN in the year 2000. So he was invited to this, what was it? Darn, I should have wrote a note on that. They had a big religious for all the different religions, World Peace Summit, I think. They gave speeches in the UN, and they went to the Waldorf Hotel. Mm-hmm. So it's called I can't remember.
Waldorf
anyway,
Astoria.
The Waldorf Hotel. Yeah.
Waldorf Astoria. Astoria. It's from the Astor family.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then they had all their workshops there, working with the WEF, like it was WF back then. Mm-hmm. They were working with him, and he gave his speech. And at that same time, because like people are trying to cancel him because they got the minutes of a meeting he had with his assistant teachers, a question and answer, and they were asking like, what about homosexual people? So in the year 2000, he said that we must have a lot of compassion for them, but basically isolate them, like just like these people are going to infect everybody else, and we don't want homosexuality spreading. So he said that they can still come, but they have to be isolated, like in their own cabin, and you could bring the food to them. They're not allowed in the Dhamma hall. That's like the pulpit, I forget. Is that what you call it in church?
That's speaking behind the podium or the pulpit, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking more like where all the pews are and the people sit.
No, that's just the congregation or the pews or...
Okay, well, they're not allowed in the church.
Wow.
They're not allowed to step foot in the church with everybody else while the sermon's being given, because they can infect everybody else with their madness. But we want to try and help them anyways, and because they believe that by meditation they're going to cure everything wrong inside of them. That's what I see with all these nuts. Like, they come here and get high, but they don't change. It's still like, if you're rotten, you're a rotten person. If you were compassionate to begin with, you're compassionate. You don't actually change your soul. That's a whole another branch of this place, and like how, like the way that they really explain that this works. But yeah, so he basically said, like, this is what he said about homosexuals. They're not even allowed to meditate with other people because they segregate the men and the women here, mostly just so that you're not interested in flirting while you're here. So you're supposed to concentrate on learning meditation and not getting distracted with meeting a chick and getting her phone number. So everybody's sort of segregated. So he said this about like in the dining hall was segregated. They used to wash the linen and the different, like, the linen you'd throw over the meditation cushions. The female and the male all had to be washed separately. But now suddenly, that's the first thing I noticed, there's no rule. We wash it all at the same time now. And then I realized the LGBTQ course is coming. They're going around and covering up all the signs that say men and women. We're not allowed to use the words men and women. They're just going to have walking areas. Everybody's going to be sleeping wherever, on the women's side, on the men's side. Like if you're a chick with a penis, or if you're whatever, there's no more segregation. And I thought, holy, because the guy that started this, as taught by S.N. Goenka, he's going to roll over in his grave. He would never believe that this is happening. And it all just happened, boom, overnight. Right?
Has there been any discussion about it? Like when you were told that this is happening, what, in a couple of weeks, the LGBTQ are coming to meditate?
Yeah. It's the next course. We're halfway through one right now.
Okay.
Because we've had like a Vietnamese course for Vietnamese people, and it would be mostly in their language, and a Burmese course. And now we're going to have the LGBTQ course.
Have you been instructed as to, other than covering up the signs, has there been any conversation that you're privy to about why there's such a departure from an age-old stance?
I haven't asked any, like, superiors, but the other ones that are in on it are just like, well, the world's changing. Like, the people that are so strict on the rules and would rat me out for anything, they're suddenly like, oh, the rules have changed. They're just ready to follow the leader. And this is compassion. And they're kind of, because a lot of people that come here from university too, like Alan said, that for the televangelists, they have to give tribute to their Masonic bosses for all the money they make, because those sheep are owned by their bosses. Their minds have been conditioned to just fall for the TV evangelists. So here we get a lot of university students. And they are the most highly suggestible people that of any demographic I've ever met. I can't even talk to them, like, because I know you've been to university, so obviously there's a lot of university people that are smart, but I just couldn't believe how after university, they're still so willing to, they just update themselves. So I've met a woman, 78 years old here, and at the patient transport, a man, 75. So they did their they went to university, got their bachelor's or whatever degrees, master's degrees in the 60s and early 70s. And both of them were still right up to date on the political correctness, on the updates, with all the transgenderism, everything. They just, they were conditioned back in the 60s, and they just accepted each update as it came, right up till now. Just blew my mind.
Yeah, Alan has said before that the higher education, the more education that you get, the more willing you are to adapt to whatever change is given to you. Another quick one was a woman in her 60s that contacted him, and her parents, her mother was in her mid-80s, married to a man, her stepfather in his mid-80s, and her nephew, the woman in her 60s, her nephew had decided to transition to female. And so Alan's listener commented to her parents, that she was just horrified by this. And both her mother and stepfather immediately jumped on her with all of the latest woke thinking about transitioning, and just told her that she was a completely backward, hopeless, hateful, how did this even happen to you? How are you even my daughter? And it's university education.
Oh, yeah.
It just makes people so adaptable.
Yeah, the universe, because what's cult? It's the root word for culture. So we're all born into a cult. And the culture is just like culturing bacteria in a petri dish. I didn't think of that myself. I got it from listening to Alan. So you create the culture for them. And they're like, I was walking around UBC, University of British Columbia, this summer to go to the beach there, and because I wanted to see, I was expecting to see rainbow flags and bearded ladies, but no, they were just, you wouldn't know if it was the 80s. They were just, they looked like little kids, like junior high to me, but they were right out of high school and dressed normally, boys and girls. I saw one fat guy with a beard and a dress, and that was about it, out of walking around all day on the campus and all over the place. But they're young little kids, and they're just so highly suggestible. Why would they have any reason to believe that they're being lied to? Last time you asked, how do you atrophy the right hemisphere? And the simple answer was to domesticate people. So then the question, how do you domesticate people? Well, you can do it through culture. You can do it with injection, injunction, and diet. Yeah. That's another way to stifle especially with the, so yeah, that's what I wanted to say about how do you, atrophy the right brain? How do you domesticate people? Diet, injection, injunctions. Just who was that? Bertrand Russell? Or
Bertrand
one of
Russell.
those.
It was Russell. Yep. I think it was the impact of science on society, but there was also the scientific outlook, and I can't keep the quotes straight, which book. So, but yeah, it was definitely Russell. So what else do you want to say about the cult? You said you were going a little bit deeper, uncovering a few things of the inner workings. Is it too soon for you? Are you still investigating this, or?
I'm meeting but this is people's personal. I don't know if I signed a disclosure agreement or what. I just signed it and read it. But who cares? Why don't you sue me? Because what you do is you declare bankruptcy. You can't get blood out of a stone. But I'm trying to figure out if because I really thought maybe they were sinister and working, but I think that they've just their whole life have been into this, and the whole thing might be run, or most of it run by true believers. But I'm just getting to know these people now. They're showing up to caretaker. They'll be the superior teachers here. And they seem like they're nice people, but I got to meet them and figure all that out.
You know, certainly when people think about a cult, they might think about, the Moonies or something where, parents have to send in a deprogrammer to rescue a teenager or run away, and they go into some kind of deprogramming for a few weeks, and then they're out and hopefully they're safe. But as you said, the root of culture is cult. And so we can look at things, and there's a cult-like atmosphere to even organizations or religious organizations that have this so-called stamp of approval on them. Because you could say, the Catholic Church is not a cult, but being a Moonie, you are in a cult. Or this particular kind of yoga is a cult, but this Protestant church isn't. But they operate on similar processes. The first is, one way or another, they're tapping into the right hemisphere of the brain, whether it is through a meditative process or the love bombing and the high that you get by, joining hands and feeling that you're part of a group, because that does release serotonin. And then the group just sort of takes care of itself, like a school of fish, or the way that, animals move in nature. And they will, some churches are even told, if you don't see somebody in the pews for 2 weeks in a row, contact them, call them up, send them a text, email, find out what's going on with them. So in this way, you are kept part of the group, and it's the carrot and the stick. The stick is that you're going to feel bad, and a lot of people say, well, hey, it really is good for you to go to church every week. But the carrot is that release that you get, which is biochemical, when people come up to you and say, I've missed seeing you. You run into somebody that you go to church with at the grocery store, and they say, I miss you in church. Well, the fact that you're missed releases a little bit of serotonin. It's a little bit of love, or maybe it's just oxytocin, but whatever. You get a little chemical release there. I'm noticed. I'm valued. I'm missed.
Yeah. So our definitions of cult are different. Like, to me, a cult is any group. If it's surfers, if it's hockey fans of one team, if it's a church, if it really is like a cult with a crazy guru, they're all part of the group and they want to belong. I know that here, we don't even see these people again. Nobody calls them to say, we love you. Like, just get the fuck out of here. Like, the course is over and don't need hangers on. And, they're just taught. But in my position, it's different. It's, you could get, ostracized. What's the word for it? Like, kicked out, shunned or whatever.
Yeah.
Because we are managers. So they say that we have to represent the whole thing and show everyone that we're good and we follow the rules. I just got dragged in.
Yeah, I was going to say, tell people what happened right after we talked last week.
Yeah, some young girl decided that she was being mean to the service or volunteers, or I thought so. She's just crazy. Like, this one, the people that come to the management, they're nuts. Like, people are crazy. I'm used to dealing with it, not just here, like my whole life. I'm always up front, and like, especially at the hospitals. But anyways, they want to fix themselves. They think they'll be a manager. They'll stay here for a year, and they'll come out the other end with all of their mental issues and their problems, and it will be dissolved through the meditation technique. That's what they're told. But she just freaked out, and I was public enemy number one, and I'm verbally abusive, and then I didn't even know what was coming. He's been eating meat, and he tried to get me to eat meat. I smelled the pungent odor of hangover on his breath. And like, yeah, I know I told everyone I was drinking, but she didn't. She's fucking lying. Or she's just crazy. It seemed like she didn't even seem like she was lying. She was just nuts.
Tell the truth, like, Peter, did you try to get her to eat meat?
No. But she would buy meat from the farmer next door. and eating it outside of the course. I think I told her that I had some deer liver in my freezer, so it was partially true. But and I might have joked around about, yeah, we can eat meat, but everything she took so seriously. And then there's two older teachers here, and she said he called so and so and his wife fucking retards. And I might have even said that. They're like a lot of the teachers that have been doing this for 30 years, they're not the brightest candles in the church, man. That's what can't you guys see that? Like, instead of worshiping and kissing their ass and thinking they're holy, like, why don't you talk to them and see that they're kind of nuts? Like, 30 years of doing this didn't do fuck all for them. They're crazy. But they just don't get that. They want to believe so bad that they're going to get fixed mentally. So, but these are only, out of all the people that come here, it's just us on this, like on the management team and the higher up and the teachers. That's where the weird cult activity, like you look at a cult, comes, where there's check-ins and seeing how you're doing and discussing how important the rules are and celibacy. And yeah, it's so funny we're having an LGBTQ course, but I'm not supposed to be meeting girls on the beach on my days off, or you just have to tell the teacher about it and talk. So there's massive group therapies, like that's what I call it, that are just so painful, because these group therapies are also becoming part of law now. Like drinking and driving, you go to group therapy now. That's your punishment. You don't even, like before you used to lose your license once for a year, next time 5 years, after that for life. Now it doesn't matter how many impaired you get, you go to the group therapy and you get your license back after 3 months. And you sit through group therapy and it's so fucking painful.
Well, what happened after you got called on the carpet for your possible meat eating and hangover breath?
I said, well, no, it wasn't true. I think, but there's two possibilities. Either I'm a liar or she's confused. She doesn't know what she's talking about. But I was really calm the whole time. And before that, I talked to this teacher that was doing this group thing, and I was telling him about that I'm distancing myself from the people here because they do have mental issues, and like, so anyways, I'm not fired yet. I'm still here. I want to make it to that LGBTQ course.
And report
and my car's
back.
Broken down. Hey?
And report back on that.
Yeah, no kidding. Just for, like, it's, now I'm reporting stuff. I used to just do these adventures for my own experience and then move on. I've forgotten half of my adventures.
Well, listen.
But yeah, it's really, hey, wind down.
We've burned through another hour.
Okay, right on.
But I think we got some.
Great.
We've got good links to send people to dig into some of this, and you sent me some nice audios and videos for people to watch, and so it's just something to think about. I think that's the point here. Is I don't really know that what you're doing is sinister. You don't really know that what you're doing is sinister. But any time that you let somebody in your head, then there's a real possibility there that somebody other than you is going to be able to kind of take the reins of the chariot.
Oh, well, yeah, I know. I don't see any danger of that at all. Yeah. I'm just, this is how I live my whole life, like, especially through school, through everything. You're just, these people are nuts. That's I'm the only one that's here. Like, it's not like I'm going to become a true believer after. I mean, hopefully you realize that from talking to me. This is just super interesting.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on here? Right back to 2300. Why is the CIA involved? Serotonin. How does the whole thing work? Why is Noah Uvari? Why is he doing 60-day courses? Uh-huh. He meditates from 4:30 in the morning till 9 at night for 60 days in a row.
Yeah, I read that, but this is like his has to do it every single year. That's
yeah, every year.
Yeah.
So this is this is a great adventure. I'm not done yet. That's why I hope I don't get fired. Yeah, okay, let's wind it down because I always try and keep you on the line just when I start having fun. But this is fun. This is great. So anytime.
It is fun. Yeah. I appreciate you stepping up and doing this. I appreciate you being willing to do this last minute. And I know that you didn't get a chance to prepare as much as you wanted to, but I think you brought a lot of interesting links of videos and audios for people to dig in a little bit and find out a little bit more about both Vipassana and the whole left brain, right brain idea. So.
Okay, I could send you some more links maybe later about even the documentaries made about Vipassana by the Vipassana people.
So thanks everybody for listening. I wanted to mention what is coming up. Oh, I've got an interesting episode coming up next week. It's going to be a little bit different format with someone, and we're going to... I'll just leave it at that. It's going to be a different format, and I think it'll be a really good conversation. So thank you again for listening, and I will be back next week.
Well, I've got something that the world didn't